As we wrap up another incredible year of storytelling, music, and connection, I want to take a moment to thank the amazing supporters who keep Set Lusting Bruce thriving, our Patreon members. Your generosity helps cover hosting costs, production tools, and that little extras that make this podcast feel like home. But more than that, your support is a vote of confidence in the power of community, fandom, and Springsteen inspired storytelling. Whether you've been with us since the early days or just recently or just joined recently, please know you are the heartbeat of this show. I want to thank our newest members that joined in October: Ed Rakowski, Nigel Biggs, and Denise Green. Thank you guys so much. And as always, I appreciate Laura V, Paul Appleton, Amy Brooks, C.K. Westbrook, Sean Poole, Dave and Jennifer Van Evers, Jeff Omer, Sylvan, Liz Brunson, Yetta, Steve Ansack, John Munson, Betsy Hodges, Levi Petrie, Liz Brunson, Stephen Malio, Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, Dale Hozak, Terry Smith, Chris Bloom, and Aunt Mary. Thank you guys so much for kicking in every month. These people get bonus episodes, behind the scene updates, and I hope they felt the love and intention behind every piece of contact. And as we look forward to 2026 with a new weekly rhythm and fresh creative energy, I'm excited to keep building this space with you. If you're not yet a member and want to join the family, you can sign up for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/setlustingbruce. Every bit helps and every name matters. Thank you for believing in this journey. Thank you for being part of this story. Thank you for keeping the music playing. Now, on to the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We are continuing a series of episodes celebrating 10 years of Set Lusting Bruce. And as part of that celebration, I went to the swamps of Jersey and spent a fabulous 3 days at Monmouth University celebrating the 50th anniversary of Born to Run. And some cool things happened. And one of the cool things is I got to meet Matthew. So, Matthew, welcome
Yes,
to the
sir.
podcast.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. I'm a public school teacher here in South Carolina. My wife and I live in the upstate, which is Greenville. And I've taught, started off in middle school, went to high school. Now I'm back in middle school again, trying to get readjusted to teaching eighth graders as I've gotten a little older is a challenge. And I come from a family of educators. All that, honestly, at least, I think I tried to avoid it for a while because I thought I was going to carve my own path and somehow wound up teaching anyway. So it's been a really rewarding career and it's given me a chance to bring like my favorite books and authors and music into the classroom. And of course, as I mentioned in New Jersey, one of the things I love in doing it as a teacher is introducing young folks to Bruce Springsteen. So it's been a rewarding career, and I feel like I've had a life of with parents as English teachers. I feel like I've had a life of words, and so that even continues today.
I am going to get to that because there's a lot there I want to unpack.
Okay.
So, any chance you run into the guys at Deck the Hallmark podcast from there at Greenville, South Carolina?
I have not.
Okay. They do a Hallmark podcast and they're always talking about they're in Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay.
So,
I'll check them out.
yeah, their podcast is all about Hallmark
Oh,
movies.
okay.
Yeah, okay, good. All right. Matthew, we always like to start at the beginning. So tell us, where did you grow up and what kind of music was your family listening to when you were a youngster?
Sure. I've lived in the South my whole life, except for 1 year where for some reason, still not quite sure to this day, I started my college career in DeKalb, Illinois at Northern Illinois University. But other than that, I've been raised and lived in the South. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. And from that point, we just went along. My father was a teacher. And so when he got his PhD, we moved because he got a better teaching job. And then from that first job, he got a better job after that. So we went from Columbia, South Carolina to Brevard, North Carolina, and then back down to South Carolina where he finished up his teaching career at Clemson.
Okay.
And growing up, my mom loved Elvis. I still remember the cover of the Elvis record, 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong. And I used to listen to that all the time when they were out of the house. I didn't want them to know that I enjoyed their music, I think. So I would play it when they were out of the house. And then my dad was a big John Denver fan and a big Bob Dylan fan. So that
Okay.
was a lot of music I heard growing up. And this morning I was thinking about it. I think the first song I remember really loving was Puff the Magic Dragon. My parents were big Peter, Paul, and Mary fans, and that'd be something that they would have played in the car.
Okay.
That's my musical background down from my folks. And then from there, I guess it's not too big a leap for me to get into classic rock and then eventually find my way to Springsteen. Those all kind of feel, you know, connected in some way. All really good songwriters, I would say, anyway.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. I find, Matthew, that there's two, if I generalize, which is
Yep.
probably a bad thing to do, but two kinds of people: the people that kind of love their parents' music and then just adjust their fandom to include their own music, and those that can't stand their parents' music till they hit 30 and
Oh,
then say, oh, that Johnny Cash guy,
yeah.
he's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. You're like, hey, I don't want to be uncool listening to Elvis, but that's awesome. That
I,
is
I,
really awesome.
I don't think, I also don't think my dad ever knew how much I liked the song Thank God I'm a Country Boy by
Oh,
John
yeah.
Denver. So, yeah. So
Yeah. Oh,
keep
that's,
those to
yeah.
myself.
Okay. Very nice. Are they still with you?
They are. They actually live, they're about an hour's drive from here, a little town called, that nobody's ever heard of, even around here hardly, called 6 Mile, South Carolina. They're in their
Okay.
80s. They play in a jam session every week, like a folk music jam session filled with senior citizens who play banjo. My dad plays banjo and guitar. My mom strums dulcimer. So it's almost like they've had a little bit of a rejuvenation into their music days in these last 5 or 6 years. So it's been
That
great to see.
is badass.
Yeah, it is. It
That
is.
is really cool.
Yep.
Very nice. Did you know you wanted to teach early on?
It's funny. I think my first thought about teaching was I'm not doing it because my
Okay.
dad did it, and my dad and I were often at odds. But then somewhere along the line, a very popular author in the South and in South Carolina in particular, because that's where he's from, is a guy named Pat Conroy, who died maybe 10 years ago. And he wrote a book called The Water is Wide, where he chronicled teaching on a poor island off the coast of Hilton Head down here in South Carolina. And the way he wrote about it and the way he wrote about reaching these kids who had never really been reached in an educational sense before really made me think, oh, okay, this is something that maybe I could do. So when I did finally make the decision to go into teaching and leave, like my goal was to be I wanted to be the Atlanta Braves play-by-play guy.
Yeah.
Eventually, I had to say goodbye to that. So when I finally made the move into teaching, it was really having read that book and had those feelings of, ooh, I think being in a classroom and seeing that happen would be really exciting. So it wasn't really, my parents definitely had an influence just because I saw it happen all the time. But I feel like my decision to go into it was based on factors that were a little bit separate from them as well.
You mentioned that in your discussion, I send a little agenda out, and some people answer it, some people don't. You don't have to answer it. It's usually just to go. But
Yeah,
you mentioned Pat Conroy,
I did.
and I'm trying to remember it if it had to be one of his, it must have been one of his movies is
Hmm.
how I found him. So I'm trying to think which
The,
one.
the two
Uh,
biggest the two biggest movies that were made from his books were The Great Santini and The Prince of Tides.
yeah,
So
but I think it was The Lords of Discipline
okay,
and I remember because I remember watching that and reading it and loving the book. And then I do remember I've read everything since.
okay,
And he is truly, I love his writing. And
I do too.
I remember taking my wife to see The Prince of Tides and going, oh, they did a good version of doing that. How did you discover Pat Conroy? And I promise we'll get to Bruce in a minute, but I
Well,
don't often get a chance to talk about just one of my literary heroes.
he's been the answer to who's your favorite author since I was 16. I
Okay.
was going into my senior year and I took AP English at Daniel High School in Clemson, South Carolina. And we had a summer reading list. And there was a book on the list called Prince of Tides. Sounded like a great title. I'd never heard of Pat Conroy. Read it, loved it. Like in some ways, it's not that dissimilar from my first, I guess, real experience with Bruce Springsteen, and that it changed my expectations for literature after. Like I just expected more from what I read after having read Prince of Tides. And I still remember, so like I finished that book sometime during the summer and then just steamrolled through everything else he had released at that point. I think maybe 4 or 5 books, to the point where like the first week and a half or 2 weeks of my senior year, my English teacher just let me sit in the back of the class and read. She didn't bother
Wow.
me. She didn't ask me to participate. She saw I was just sitting back there reading, and she just let me keep doing it. And I've really loved his work, and just at book signings and stuff, gotten to meet him a couple times since then. And my aunt lives in Beaufort, which is the part of the state that he's from. I felt a big connection with him for years.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I want to go back and start reading some books again. Yeah, thank you. That was absolutely beautiful. Since you did talk about that, can you remember when you discovered Bruce and what about him spoke to you?
I think it's funny because just in kind of preparation for this, I was going back through that. And so when I was, I guess, Born in the USA probably came out when I was 13ish. And I was born in 71. I think that came out in 84. And it must have made some kind of impression on me. I know I heard it. I can remember hearing that song, Born in the USA, on my Walkman as I mowed the grass and things. But for whatever reason, like it just didn't resonate. Like I never would have called him a favorite artist. I went through a big Billy Joel phase around that time. But later, and it was after I got a car and kind of started driving in the car for a while at a time, figuring out what radio I wanted to listen to while I was in the car, settling on classic rock. And then it was Thunder Road. I'd heard it a few times and just let it go. But eventually, like I just stopped and really listened to the lyrics, and no chorus, about getting out, which I always felt like I could be living in the greatest situation ever, and I would still have a little bit of a wanderlust in me that would say, "Oh, you got to get out." So I think that was part of it. And yeah, it wasn't like anything I'd really listened to before regularly in terms of the structure of the song. It wasn't like the typical it didn't just end on a chorus fading out, but it ended on this great last line that kind of just made you want to yell. So yeah, that was the moment I think that I'm like, I got to listen to more of this. And it's been that ever since.
I always like to preference the number of times you've seen Bruce perform live is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are. But are you someone who counts?
I I had a pretty good count for a while, and then it I can tell you that it's more than 30, and I'm pretty sure it's less than 35 or 40. It's in that range right there. The first show I
Okay,
went to was The Ghost of Tom Joad. Because for whatever reason, when I was younger, it's probably an economics thing too. I didn't have a lot of,
sure.
I wasn't rolling in dough when I was 19, 20, 21. But when I finally started going to concerts and realized, oh, I can go see Bruce Springsteen in concert, I drove to New Orleans and saw him on the Ghost of Tom Joad tour. And from that point on, whenever he was on tour, if I could drive to him, I went. My wife and I drove to DC for one of the first reunion shows. We went to Orlando to see the Vote for Change tour. I eventually had a little bit of money, so I spent enough to go see him in New Jersey. So I've been to a lot of different cities. And then he just seemed to be touring all the time for those years and multiple stops in the
Yeah.
South. And the set list changed every night. So it was worth it. Like you were going to see, I can remember seeing him back to back in Greensboro and Atlanta and getting 9 different songs. So Greensboro, Charlotte, Atlanta was basically my run. Lots of shows in those cities from 2000 through I saw him in Greensboro on this most recent tour just last year or 2 years ago, whenever
Yeah.
the Letter to You tour came through.
Stories from tours, stories from shows you want to share with me?
Sure. I remember, so there's nothing really big. I guess one funny one was at the New Orleans one. It was the first show I'd been to. And I'd listened to I like the Ghost of Tom Joad album, but I also had never been well, I hadn't been to that many concerts at that point, but this was a concert where he's hushing the audience. So he's asking everybody to be quiet. And he very politely at the start of the show said, so after a little introduction and said what the night was going to be like, and he said, I'm just telling you this just so I can tell you, you know, shut the F up was what he said. And everybody laughs. And then he starts the show. And within 10 minutes, they've had to kick a guy out because he keeps yelling, Where's Clarence? Where's Clarence? Drunkenly. So that was my first Springsteen experience. And he played in Greenville, which was great,
Yeah.
very easy drive for us. And coming out of that concert, I saw several current and former students, and that was very exciting. I didn't know they were going to be there, and we talked about it a little bit, and they all confirmed that it was listening to them in my class that made them want to come with their parents to the show. So I would say those are two memorable experiences at Springsteen shows, and just seeing him in different places. Like I don't really have a story about the New Jersey show, but seeing him in the Meadowlands was just I was on the field. It just felt something different.
What time period is that when you saw him in Jersey?
The Meadowlands. Oh man, what tour would that have been? I'd have to guess. It was early 2000s.
Okay. Okay. We went to see him at the end of the second River tour.
Okay.
My son and I, and it was MetLife then, and we really loved it. Chris is my son's a huge Cowboy fan, and we're going to see the Giants home stadium. But he to this day, if the Cowboys are playing in there, he goes, they have good popcorn.
That's his memory from the Springsteen show.
And the sound was amazing. We were just amazed how good the sound could be on an outdoor arena.
Oh,
yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure. This is
all right. Do you fall? So I know one other like diehard Springsteen fan, and she said this to me for years. It doesn't matter how many times you see him. If you didn't see him on the River Tour, you never saw him. And I just want to know if you fall into that camp. If you told people that before, they're like, if you missed the River Tour, if you came along after that, did you miss when the deal was at its best?
No, because my first show wasn't until 2002.
Okay.
So this was the second River Tour when he was doing, Okay. What I do find, Matthew, is, and if I've repeated that, I know I said it a couple times this past weekend when we were in Jersey together, but one of the things I find is most of the time when I ask that question, how many times you've seen him, the word only gets included. I've only gone 20 times.
Because they know there's somebody.
I've only done 35. I've only done 100. It is this.
Yes. Yes.
And it is one because they know so many people have done more.
Yeah.
But I also think it's also as this almost only 12 because they want more.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. No, I joke a lot about that there's two kinds of people, the people that see him live and go, wow, that's a long show. And the others that go, oh my God, when can I do this again?
Yeah.
I have something similar to you. My second show was a Devils and Dust show.
Okay.
And so and the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I got pulled up and had better seats. The magical man in black found me, and so it was pretty good seats. And there was two couples in front of me. They looked college age. And they had been drinking. And you could hear her, when's he going to do Dancing in the Dark? Why isn't he doing a song I know? And the four of them left. They weren't escorted out, but they were. And yes, I do remember Bruce saying, please no clapping. My timing is tennis is at best. So yeah, I get that. Yeah. Talk about, first off, I love the idea that you helped your students find Bruce. But talk about, first off, what subjects do you teach?
I teach English, and I've taught English that's the only subject I've ever taught.
And is that because of the love of reading?
Oh, yeah, there's no other subject I could ever be qualified to teach. Like, I probably could have faked my way through history teaching that because it's reading comprehension too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I never had any thoughts about teaching anything else other than English because I feel like I have, if not, I at least have an affinity for it. So I knew that wasn't gonna die. I knew that one of the things I could try to do was bring a passion for reading into the classroom.
So how much do you mix in grammar and composition with reading?
I try. I've scaled it down. When I first started, I think I thought I had to teach everything. So I was
Yeah,
teaching, like, I guess the kind of go-to funny grammar word is gerunds. And I was teaching gerunds the first couple
yeah,
of years I taught. And then at some point when I started teaching high school, I realized like there was a simpler approach. And so now what I do is I just try to introduce students to the things that are going to get them in trouble in their writing. So it's not so like we don't necessarily have to know everything about it, but we should know the difference between your and your. We should know what a complete sentence looks like. We should know how to use punctuation. So there are just some
yeah.
basic things that I do now that I feel like if they screwed it up on an application or a resume, somebody with any sense would notice it. Not like grammar Nazi stuff, but like just, oh, how could you make that mistake on something that you're supposed to be taking seriously? So I've scaled it back. But yeah, like it's not an everyday thing, but I'd say every couple of weeks we're hitting a grammar section.
So I remember Donna Weeks was my high school homeroom teacher. And I don't know how your school does it, but we have the same homeroom teacher, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, the same one. And she was also an English teacher. And I remember I had her for freshman English, and it was 95% reading, because she said, you guys have just spent your life diagramming sentences and
Mhm.
learning how to conjugate verbs. And I just, I don't want to teach that. And I love your idea of these basic things of the different these and the and there and the
Yep.
different reasons for it. And you're right, like the idea, I'm trying to make sure you don't embarrass yourself. And so she also would, I loved her because she would, this is going to be boring, so we're not going to read the novel that's in there. All right, everyone go, get Scholastic Book Club. All right, everyone's going to get this book, and we're going to read The Outsiders
Yeah.
or yeah. And I already love to read, but having that in was just fascinating
No,
and discussing.
I love that. And my experience has been that if when I teach students that are readers, I don't really need to teach them basic writing grammar. They've read,
Yeah,
they know what that stuff looks like.
yeah,
I was a terrible grammar student, but I knew how to
yeah.
write because I'd read.
Yeah, and I'm going to end the podcast with the Mary question, but
Yep.
one of the things that I bring up sometimes, when it isn't often, but about a percentage will say we don't know the answer, and it's important for you not to know the answer.
Yeah.
That's the important of it. And
Okay.
I always go, I think back of reading the short story, The Princess and the Tiger, right? And just begging Miss Weeks, no, what did he choose? What's the answer? And yeah, a lot of great things. We read The Crucible
Yep.
while we were talking about and we read The Crucible as a part of, because for our junior year, they combined history and English into one like subject. So it was a
Okay.
2-hour class. And so we read The Crucible while we were covering the McCartney era. Oh,
Yes.
which was, yeah, yeah, I love that. How do you throw Bruce in there?
I've done it in a couple different ways.
Okay.
When I first started teaching middle school, I remember one of the things I did, this was in my third year teaching. I probably would have done some songs up until then, but my third year, I just decided we're going to listen to Born to Run. So every day we did a song. And it's funny. And so they'd have to analyze the lyrics, or I would ask maybe a couple of questions about them. I remember, and maybe thinking back on this might not have been the most appropriate question to ask just because of what the answer is. But in Meeting Across the River, he says, make it look like you're carrying a friend. And I asked the students, what do you think the friend is? Because in my mind, it's a gun. And I think some of them said that, if I remember right. So, like, I would ask them like questions that would force them to interpret a little bit or get more than what was
Yeah.
on the page. And so we did. So for 8 straight days, we did that. And I still have a student that year when at the end of the year, her notebook was such an immaculate shape. I just asked if I could have it so I could use it as like a guide for me going forward. She gave it to me, and I can go back and look. Like now that I'm teaching middle school again, I've used it, and I can go back and look at what she wrote about Born to Run, and it's great. I just love going back and seeing that student get super engaged. She wrote about how 10th Avenue Freeze Out was her. I made them tell me what their favorite song on the record was, so
Okay.
they couldn't cop out and say I don't have one. So she wrote
Yeah.
about 10th Avenue Freeze Out. So that was fun. more sophisticatedly, my AP Lit class a couple of years ago, when we got finished reading The Grapes of Wrath, those were 90-minute classes at the high school. And so I had them, we listened to The Ghost of Tom Joad, and they had to pick out a few songs they felt like specifically captured themes or elements expressed in The Grapes of Wrath as well. So just making that same connection that Springsteen talked so much about making between those two works. So there was, for a while, maybe for about 5 years in a row, the first assignment I would give would be to tell the students to go home and write about The Wrestler, because I just love the imagery in that song. And I
Yeah.
thought it was something they could do something with. And even asking them a question like, why do you think the name of the song is The Wrestler? I thought that was something that could get them thinking a little bit beyond what was on the page. There's so many of his songs that I've used. Like his writing is, for years on 9/11, we'd listen to Nothing Man from The Rising. There's something both specific and general enough about his work to have it reach people of all ages and backgrounds, I think, where you don't have to, there's a way that even a kid who hasn't been exposed to analysis can still find something in there that they can connect to.
Yeah. Have you reached out to Little Steven's Teach Rock?
I
And
tried it a couple of years ago. I did it, and it was right before COVID.
oh,
And there were
okay.
some things that were supposed to happen. I think I know one thing that I was bummed, and this was very selfish. They did it. The Disciples of Soul did a show in Atlanta, and
Okay.
teachers were going to get discounted tickets, and that show never happened. And
Yeah.
then there were some video things that were supposed to happen. That's what happened. There were some video things that were supposed to happen that year, YouTube stuff,
Okay.
and we were all at home. Like we went home in
Yeah.
February of that year, and we didn't come back till the next year. So
Okay.
I just lost out on that window, and then never went back to it. So,
Okay. Great.
but I love that program. I love that program.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea too. And I know they're still active, so you can always go reach that. What kind of feedback do they give you on Bruce? Do they come and talk to you about their favorite artist?
Not so much of that, I guess. Usually, what I'll get is the most, what they'll say sometimes is what I said earlier about my parents' music. They'll say, I've had students before saying, I didn't want to like it, but I really wound up liking this. This song wound up on my playlist, and I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And so or they'll say, and this is more about listening to music in class in general, I think, because he wasn't the only artist we listened to, but
Yeah.
a lot of students would come back after going through exercises like that, and particularly with his music, and say, I can't listen to music the same anymore. I either because they're just like locked into analyzing the lyrics a little more than they used to, or they just have a little bit higher expectation for the music they're listening to. I've had students tell me that before, and that's always really rewarding. Like I said during my presentation, it's those kind of things that really give me, I'm not kidding when I tell you how much satisfaction that gives me, even more than some more
Hmm.
kind of stereotypical teacher stuff.
So let's talk about the weekend. So,
Yes.
how did you hear about the symposium and talk about going through the process?
I think this might be the one time when my Facebook algorithm came through for me, because that's where I saw it. That is where I saw it. And so I
Yeah.
immediately went. They they did that same conference for the 40th, I think. I don't, they did
I
some,
know they did Wild and the Innocent, I think,
maybe,
and they
maybe
were gonna do one pre-COVID, and then COVID messed everything up. Okay.
there was one a few years ago that I backed out of. Like I started writing the thing over the summer, and I just
Okay.
couldn't get it the way I wanted. And I started thinking about the cost and the interruption to the school year and all that, and I just gave up on it. And so when this one came up again, I was like, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So I saw it on Facebook, and then also I found a topic, like they gave you that list of, there was a list of little categories we could choose from, and one of them was Bruce
Yeah.
Springsteen as narrative poet, and I felt like I could really sink my teeth into that, because
Hmm.
I enjoy getting into the text.
Hmm.
And what I wound up writing about was the value of Springsteen giving his main speakers in those songs somebody else to talk to. So even though they might be losers or loners, you felt like, wait a minute, they've still got somebody they count on or want love from. So I felt
Yeah.
like that was a way. So I felt like I could get into that and maybe bring out a side of those characters or those songs that might be interesting to somebody.
Okay. So let's go through a little bit of your presentation and let's talk about it.
Okay. So I think the song I thought that the one I had the most, Backstreets is my favorite song, and I really loved writing about that one. But I think the song that, like, if I could say from my own perspective that I felt like I guess I'm most satisfied with what I did with it was Meeting Across the River. Because
Okay.
I feel like in that song, the narrator is such, I don't have any doubt Like I know we're talking about what happens at the end of Thunder Road later. I don't have any doubt of what happens at the end of that song. That deal goes bad.
Yeah.
Whatever deal they're trying to work out doesn't work out, and maybe 2 weeks later he's trying to pull off some other deal.
Yeah.
And so he's so easy. That narrator's so easy to dismiss. He's so easy. He's so easy just to look at and say, "God, what a waste of time." But the fact that he's got Eddie there to talk to, and that Eddie still might be willing to give him these things, and that this guy, it gives his desperation like a humanity. And
Yes.
so I enjoyed digging into that and pointing out that I can't say that I've learned enough to know that you can't say this is what the author did, but I can't believe that it would have gone unnoticed by like that Springsteen would have thought when he was writing, I don't want people to hate my narrator. Like my narrator has to be somebody that has some value to people. And I just feel like a really easy way to give somebody value is to give them a companion. And so this narrator has a companion. And I really enjoyed writing about that and talking about the
Hmm.
empathy that we wind up feeling for the narrator, even as we're thinking, oh my God, this isn't going to work out. You're going to lose again.
Yeah. I love that because the idea of this, you, the, this time it's going to work out, right? The
Mhm.
idea that optimism and showing that even though, because it only takes one, and when that, and I have there was a really very popular sports talk show host that said there's people down at the homeless shelter, that bet with the do theory, I'm due, and that not is necessarily. Why is Backstreet your favorite song? To go back just a few
Oh,
minutes.
man, first of all, it's the most bang for the buck because I really feel like it's 3 or 4 songs in one, both musically, like it just
Yeah.
soars and ebbs and cuts around a corner. And then the ending, when you think it's over, it's just all it's doing is just building back up. I just love all that.
Okay.
I love the idea of, in my mind, it's one of the few songs, it was probably the first song I heard where I felt like I was hearing a song about one man singing about the loss of a male friend. I never saw it as a love song. I always saw Terry as this really close buddy of his who he loved, who he lost somehow.
Yeah.
And in my mind, there's that lyric, I didn't write about it, but the lyric where he says, "And I hated him when you went away." In my mind, the him has always been, and this is me just projecting, but it's always been his own father. And I don't know why. I don't know how that's connected. It just feels like it is. So something about that song, like it spoke to the alienation I was feeling at the time. I would have heard that. I probably heard that. Definitely heard it sometime after Thunder Road because, like I said, that was when I started getting into it. That would have been 19 or 20. That was probably when I was feeling at my most distant from my friends and my folks. And so that song just got me on lots of different levels. Thinking about myself as being the one who was at a loss, like Terry is in that song, and then me projecting the dad stuff. Like that was never not going to be a song that I was going to love. And I've loved it ever since. That song never gets old. I've been fortunate enough to hear it live a few times. It just moves me still.
Yeah. Do you, so when you presented the paper, is there, I got lucky. Ed Rakowski, wonderful guy that's been on the podcast a couple of times, said he reached out and he said, would you guys be interested in doing, instead of a paper, us doing a podcast or roundtable?
Okay.
And they said, oh, yeah, we would. And the only thing we had to do was to be ready to answer questions.
Right.
How, yeah, talk about your process of how do you're going to pick your songs, you're going to
Mhm.
go. Some people did PowerPoint, some people
Mhm.
didn't. Talk
Mhm.
about all that process.
I knew I couldn't write about. I wanted to once I figured out. Actually, I don't know. It's hard to say which came first. My idea about which songs I wanted to write about, or the idea of. I'm not sure how the idea struck me of. Oh, in this song, even though he's trying to get out and he's a loser, he's got Mary, or in this song, he's got Wendy. But somehow that all clicked. And in my mind, I was able to link those 4 songs because of where they come on the album. You've got the first song, you've got the middle two, and then you've got the penultimate. And so I felt like that was a nice range of songs. And I felt like for 15 minutes, that was probably pretty good. And I could draw connections between those narrators and their experiences. In terms of the PowerPoint thing is funny because at first I was against it. I'm like, this is a paper. This is an academic paper. I am
Yeah.
not going to use a power. I'm not going to sync using a PowerPoint. And then I Googled it because I wanted to make sure. And also, as a teacher, I know And I know eighth graders are different than the people that were up there, but I worry about people's attention spans. And can people
Right.
sit there and listen to somebody talk for 15 minutes? Is that something we can
Yeah.
do anymore? So I Googled it. And according to Google, a lot of academic papers do now feature a visual presentation. So I went ahead and
Okay.
I just used some images that I felt like would be appropriate, would go along with it. I used some words from my own paper, just like little snippets, some lyrics from the song, but nothing that was too overwhelming, just like an accompanying piece. I think each slide stayed up about a minute and a half. The paper was about
Yeah.
14 minutes, 15 minutes. So it felt at first that really was the most daunting thing for me, is figuring out how to craft a PowerPoint presentation around a 15-page paper, because I was not going to, my whole teaching life has been spent telling students, don't just stand there and read from your PowerPoint. So I had to do something that was going to give me the chance to not do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I do think it's interesting because it is a paper. And this is the first academic conference I've ever gone to. I've gone to conventions and I've made presentations, but I've never I've presented a case study. So it was interesting to, oh, I guess they should read the paper because that's their whole point. They're presenting a paper. So did you get any feedback?
not, I had a couple of people just say nice job afterward. One woman was nice enough to say, basically talking about how lucky my students were, which I appreciated.
Yes.
But yeah, it was all positive, and I thought the whole weekend was filled with that kind of level of
Hmm.
camaraderie. And all the
Yeah.
presentations I saw, they needed people to share presentations, and so I volunteered to do that just because I wanted to get the most out of the weekend.
That's what I did
And
too. Yeah.
yeah, and the things going on in that room I thought were really good as well. I will say that I realized later that I cut corners because mine's not a true academic paper. I didn't do any research. I just analyzed the text on my own. I didn't go say according to this person or this person to like back me up. I didn't have any really like outside supporting evidence. But I think going into it, I just wanted to write something that I wanted it to mean. I wanted to write the paper that I wanted to write. I think I thought
Yeah.
if I'm going to, I figured there'd be enough creativity, and I figured there wouldn't be, nobody was going to not let me do it if I didn't cite
Yeah.
sources. So I felt like I wanted it to be about empathy because that's
Yeah.
important to me in my classroom. I wanted it to be personal. That's why the Backstreet stuff is in there. And I wanted it to be something that I felt really confident in. And that's why like I focused it on lyrical analysis. So I was really satisfied with the way it came out. I'm just sad that there's no way it would ever be considered for publication because it's not a true
Yeah.
academic paper. I'd have to go back and really revamp it.
Yeah.
It was totally worth it. It was a great weekend. Loved
Yeah.
doing it. Loved writing the paper. Really good.
Yeah. And are you going to send it? And are they keeping it there in the archives?
I haven't heard anything about that. We did get an email about we can submit it to Rutgers to be
Okay.
published in a journal. That's what I know. My paper's not up to that standard right now. I'd have to go in
Okay.
and I don't think it'd be hard to go find quotes from Springsteen himself or commentary on his music that would, or even cultural commentary about, to
Yeah.
me, a rejection of empathy these days
Yeah.
around the world. I could find that stuff. I just have to decide whether or not, I guess I need to make the decision how
Do I
much.
want to put that time in it? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
So were you there Friday or Saturday?
I was there both Friday, and then I screwed up the whole ticket thing for Saturday, but I got a note Friday night saying we got a wait list ticket for you on Saturday. So I was able to go. So I went to the movie thing Friday night, and then yeah, I was there for the symposium Saturday. It's just incredible,
You want
incredible.
to share any thoughts about either night or
Well,
either day?
they talk about Bruce Springsteen doing 4 hour shows. He did a 3 hour. He was on stage for 3 hours talking about Born to Run. Like
Yeah, he was.
he did the songwriting, he did the songwriting of the song, songwriting of the record itself, or the whole record, and then he was on there for the production of the record. And I guess I thought like the E Street Band or somebody would be there, and of course Max was there Friday night, but you just don't
Yeah.
know. And I
Yeah.
guess they'd even given it away by the time Springsteen came out, but
Yeah.
it was still a huge surprise. So yeah, it was great. The two songs at the end, I've always joked that I've always said that like I would pay a full concert ticket price to see either Bruce Springsteen play Born to Run or to see U2 do Where the Streets Have No Name. Like
Right.
those are my two
Yes.
concert songs for all time. And
Yeah.
I just about did that. And it was worth it. I can vouch for it. It was worth it.
So in 2002, I'm so happy you said that, Matthew. So in 2002 was my first show, and it was The
Okay.
Rising.
Okay.
And I'd listened to The Rising a couple of times, but not studied it.
Hmm.
So when he came out, a lot of songs I didn't recognize because I was a casual fan before that. And so I, and so at the end, my wife said, "Were you happy?" And I said, because she was a little bored because she didn't know any of the songs.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, if he had come out and done Born to Run and gone backstage, I would have been happy.
Yep.
To hear them do Thunder Road with two of the original, the old
Yeah.
74 band.
Yeah. That aspect.
Yeah, it was the only thing you're like, man, we couldn't have got another drum set for Vinny. Just let's get all of it. But there was a picture backstage of all three of them. They did
Okay.
have Boom Carter, Vinny, and Max sitting there. So
That's
yeah,
nice.
it was just really wonderful. You've talked about Backstreets. Let's get back to you being a fan.
Okay.
Favorite albums, songs, stories you want to tell from any of them?
I think so. I think Tunnel of Love is an album that gets, I guess I don't listen to it as much as some of the other ones, but I've always really liked that record. And that was a record I couldn't have appreciated until I got older, I think, which is probably why I missed it the first time around, really. But those songs about, and I've heard him say that like it was the first time where he felt like he wrote well about men and women and relationships.
Yeah,
And I think probably when I heard it, I was at a point where I was ready to hear songs like that and had been through some of those experiences. A song like Valentine's Day has always stuck with me because that last line about "baby, be my lonely Valentine." I just think that phrase "lonely Valentine" is to me what draws me to Springsteen. Like it's the reason I'm gonna forget the name of it. If I should fall behind, it's the reason if I
yeah,
should fall behind means so much to me. It was our wedding song. He writes songs that show you that like love is attainable, but you're gonna have to work for it, and it might be like a little dark at times. And I just never heard music like that before. So Tunnel of Love strikes me as being one of those where like almost every song kind of has that little bit of edge to it. And I know it's his. I think it's viewed as like his divorce album. And I also put a lot of stock in. I think divorce albums are usually great.
one of the things I've said is that this is sacrilege, but I would,
Hmm.
if I had to choose between listening to Darkness or listening to
Okay,
Tunnel, I would probably pick Tunnel.
that's an interesting
Uh,
debate.
yeah. And I said that you can't appreciate Tunnel of Love until you've had your heart broken a couple of times or you've been in a pretty long-term relationship.
I would agree.
And then I hear a 19-year-old kid that tells me it's his favorite album, and I go, "What the hell do I know?"
There you go.
But
Yep,
yes,
all the time.
I agree with like you said. It feels like there's just so much depth in there. So yeah, I absolutely agree. I love Tunnel of Love. It's one of my favorite albums too.
I do have a from the Rising. I've got a funny little. It's a little grammar thing. In Waiting on a Sunny Day, he says, "I'm a drummer girl that can't keep the beat."
Yeah,
And when we listened to that song in class, and I didn't even mean for this to be part of the teaching, but one of the students asked, "Why is he saying he's a girl?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he says right here, he says, "I'm a drummer girl who can't keep the beat." Because the lyrics don't have the punctuation. And I'm like, no, what it should be is I'm a drummer, comma, girl, comma, who he's talking to the girl. He's not saying he is a girl. But I thought
yeah,
that was just a little funny
that's
misinterpretation that
awesome.
changes the song. But yeah,
So my always thing is, okay, you can't be a one-legged dog walking down the street.
yes,
How
yes.
can you be?
That's funny because the question I ask my students is, I need you to picture a one-legged dog,
Yeah,
and then I'll ask them, are y'all picturing a three-legged dog? And they're all and they all their minds explode. They're like, oh my God, we are. Because I did
yeah,
too. Like the first probably 10 times I
yeah.
heard that song, I'm picturing a three-legged dog.
And
Yeah.
so I'm like, wait a minute, Bruce, that does not make any sense.
Well,
So
I
yeah,
just try to sell them on the idea of imagine how bad you'd feel for the three-legged dog, and now imagine the one-legged dog.
yes,
So
yes, absolutely. Any songs you're still chasing
to
that you want
hear,
to hear live? Yeah,
I'll tell you what, I saw when he did the full album tours and I saw him do River front to back and I saw him do Born to Run front to back. And I want to say that took out a lot of the rarities that
I
I
bet it
probably would
did.
never have
Yes.
gotten, especially the River that I would have
Yeah.
never gotten to hear. So I don't know that I don't think I've got like the white whale of Springsteen
Okay.
songs that
Okay.
I heard Backstreets a couple times. I don't think that's an every night thing.
Yeah.
Later, it became a little more
Yeah.
prevalent,
With
but
the latest tour he did.
yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess maybe a little more of the Tunnel of Love stuff. I could probably go back and find. I don't know that I've ever heard Tunnel of Love, the song live.
Yeah.
That might be a good one.
Yeah. Very nice. Cool. This was so much fun. Thank you.
I love it.
You are, for better or worse, you are the first person I connected over the weekend that's joined me. I have
Oh,
3 or 4 more people that have signed up, but you were the
okay.
first.
All
So
right.
you're setting a high bar, my friend.
Thank you.
You
Thank you
go.
very much.
All right, in a few minutes, I'm going to ask you for final thoughts and how people can reach you.
Okay.
But Jay Armstrong was, like you, an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. He has
Okay.
since retired. He had a writing club and he did just an absolutely great guy. And he would give his students the lyrics to Thunder Road, and
Okay.
they would spend 2 classes breaking it apart, treating it as a poem. They would compare it to Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken, and other things. And then at the end of the class, he would ask his students, "Do you think Mary gets in the car?" So that was
Okay.
their assignment. So the question you have, Matthew, is do you think Mary gets in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
All right. When I saw this was going to be a question I would need to consider, I was stunned because in my mind, like I've never had that question.
Yes.
She absolutely gets in. He makes a great argument. I was telling my wife earlier today, I was like, I know he does say to her at one point, "You're not a beauty, but hey, you're all right." But then he also says he doesn't have that much to offer except what's under his hood. So I feel like he's just keeping it real, which I feel like in the world of that narrator, that works. And there's no better closing line than it's a town full of losers. We're pulling out of here to win. Like you're getting on board with that. Like
Yeah.
that's your chance. So yeah, in my mind, they're going together. So for
So
sure.
I had someone earlier today said, I have to ask you, does anyone ever say no? And
Oh,
I go,
that's a good
yeah,
question.
about half my people say no.
Okay.
In my mind, and the way you do with great books and great movies, you fill in mind canon.
Yes.
In my mind, I feel like Mary is always putting herself down. I feel like Mary's always saying, I'm not that pretty.
Right.
I'm not that young anymore. Who would want me? And so I picture that our hero is in the spirit of a good salesperson, bringing up her objections in first and hitting it. But
Yeah.
yes, my wife says she didn't in the car because he calls her ugly. So there we go.
I will also say that I was in the camp that thought it was waves instead of sways, and I
Okay.
was recently disabused of that. So who
Okay.
knows? Who knows?
There are people that are more passionate about sways or waves than they are gun control. That is our
It,
version of
it's
the controversy. Yeah.
two Americas. Two
Yes.
Americas.
Yes. Matthew, this was so much fun. Thank you. I
Thank
hope
you.
you
I
had a
really
good
enjoyed it.
time. If someone wants to reach you, how can they?
I'll just give you my email address. As a teacher, I stay off socials during the
I
year.
get
So,
that's
but please feel free to send me an email at my last name, Truesdale, Truesdale. My first initial M, so it's truesdalem@gmail.com.
perfect. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts?
This was great. Spending an hour on a Monday talking about Springsteen. Couldn't do better. So I appreciate you coming up to me, giving me the chance at the conference. And this feels like to me, it just gets to extend that weekend a little bit longer. So it makes it feel that much more special. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
That is very sweet of you to say. I agree. And there was something pretty special about me and you and 698 other people. So
Yep.
it's
Yep.
pretty
Agreed.
special. So
All
thank you,
right.
Matthew. All
Yes,
right,
sir.
listeners, go. Please remember to be safe. Please remember to be kind. And we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Thank you so much for listening, for being part of this journey. Your support means everything. If you've got thoughts, feedback, or just want to say hi, drop me a line at setlustingbruce@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. The podcast has its own Facebook page, Setlusting Bruce, and Setlusting Bruce on Twitter, aka X. I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter and would love for you to follow me. If you enjoyed the episode, head to your favorite podcast player and leave the podcast a review. Hopefully a 5-star one. It helps others discover the show and keeps the boss's stories flowing. Tell another Bruce Springsteen fan about the podcast. Share it on your social media. The best way for people to learn about Set Lusting Bruce and the stories we're capturing is through word of mouth, from one fan to another. For now, keep hope alive, and I'll see you further on down the road.